The weight of quiet moments. The small apartment was quiet except for the soft swish of water in the sink. It was the kind of quiet that came when the world outside had forgotten about you. The kitchen walls, patterned with faded blue flowers, held the scent of soap powder and damp fabric. A single overhead bulb flickered faintly, as if it, too, was tired. Emma stood at the sink, her sleeves rolled up, her hands deep in cool water. Her knuckles were pale from the effort of scrubbing a child's shirt. It was a small shirt, blue with a cheerful dinosaur print, but the stains seemed stubborn, as if they wanted to stay. Soap bubbles clung to her fingers and the edge of the basin, catching the light in fragile rainbows. Her son, Ben, was asleep on her back, his small body wrapped snugly in a striped sling. His head rested against her shoulder, his soft breath warm on her neck. One arm was draped around the green plush dinosaur he never let go of, even in sleep. Emma moved carefully, mindful not to wake him. Every movement was measured, quiet. The sink was old and shallow, the kind found in apartments that hadn't seen renovation in decades. Around it, a thin line of limescale traced the edges where water had pooled over the years. The counter beside it was dusted with soap powder, a little mess she would wipe away later. For now, her focus was on the rhythm: dip, scrub, rinse. It was a rhythm that made her feel both exhausted and oddly steady. Emma's life had been like this for months, ever since Ben's father had left. The bills didn't wait. The rent didn't pause to ask if she was ready. She had taken 2 part-time jobs, cleaning rooms at a motel during the day and working the late shift at a corner store 3 nights a week. The hours in between were spent here, in this kitchen, tending to Ben and the endless list of chores. Laundry was done by hand now. The laundromat had raised its prices, and every coin counted. She told herself it wasn't so bad. It kept her moving. It kept her from thinking too much. But on nights like this, when the air felt heavy and the quiet pressed against her, she couldn't help but wonder how long she could keep going. The sound of the door opening broke her thoughts. It was soft at first, a careful click of the lock, then the creak of hinges. Emma froze for a moment, her hands still in the water. She turned her head just enough to see the figure standing in the doorway to the kitchen. It was a man, tall, in a dark blue suit. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, and his hair was neatly styled. Warm yellow light from the hallway framed him, casting his face half in shadow. "Emma," he said, his voice low. It took her a second to place him. She had seen him once before, briefly, at the motel where she cleaned rooms. He had introduced himself as Daniel, just another guest, polite but distant. She had thought nothing more of it. Now here he was, in her kitchen. Emma's first instinct was to tighten her hold on Ben's sling. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice steady but cautious. Daniel stepped forward, but slowly, as if aware of how his presence might startle her. "I'm sorry for coming unannounced," he said. "I needed to see you. I wanted to explain something." She turned back to the sink, rinsing the shirt in her hands. "About what?" There was a pause. She could hear the faint hum of the hallway light behind him. "I wasn't just a guest at the motel," Daniel said. "I'm the CEO of the company that owns it." Emma stopped moving. The shirt in her hands dripped steadily into the basin. She wasn't sure if she had heard him right. When she glanced over her shoulder, his expression was calm but serious. "I've been visiting some of our properties," he continued. "Undercover. To see how things really are for the people who work there." His gaze moved briefly to Ben, then back to her. "That day I saw you cleaning, you were carrying him on your back while you worked. I've thought about it ever since." Emma looked away. She wasn't sure whether to feel embarrassed or angry. "People have to work," she said simply. "That's just life." "Yes," he agreed, "but some work shouldn't be that hard. Not when it doesn't have to be." She finished rinsing the shirt and laid it across a small drying rack near the sink. The water dripped softly into a bowl beneath. Her hands were red from the cold, but she ignored them. Daniel took a step closer, careful not to intrude. "I came here tonight because I want to help," he said. "I don't mean just charity. I mean giving you a position that pays fairly, with hours that let you be with your son." Emma turned to face him fully now. The kitchen light cast faint shadows under her eyes, a map of long nights and short sleep. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you haven't stopped," he replied. "You keep going, even when no one is watching. That kind of strength, it's rare. And it matters." For a moment, the only sound was Ben's quiet breathing and the faint drip of water from the drying shirt. Emma studied Daniel's face, searching for any trace of insincerity. She found none. "I don't want a handout," she said finally. "This isn't one," he said. "It's a job. A chance. You've already proved you can work harder than most. Let me make it count." Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed careful. "What kind of job?" "Management," he said. "At the new property we're opening downtown. You'd oversee operations, training, scheduling. We'll cover the training and arrange childcare if you need it." Emma felt the weight of the moment press against her. She thought about the months ahead, the bills stacked in the drawer, the way her chest tightened every time she saw the rent notice. She thought about Ben, about the small world she wanted to give him, one where the weight on her shoulders wasn't always so heavy. The idea of stepping into something so different was almost frightening. But there was something steady in Daniel's voice, something that felt like a bridge instead of a cliff. She nodded slowly. "All right," she said. "I'll try." Daniel's expression warmed, just slightly, but enough to soften the room. "Good," he said. "I'll have the details sent over tomorrow. And Emma, thank you for letting me stop by tonight." She managed a faint smile. "Thank you for seeing me." He inclined his head, then stepped back toward the doorway. The warm yellow light followed him until he disappeared down the hall. Emma stood in the kitchen for a moment, letting the quiet settle again. She could still feel the faint warmth of his words, as if they had shifted something inside her. The sink was still half full of water, soap bubbles floating lazily on the surface. She reached in, wrung out the last shirt, and set it on the rack. Ben stirred softly in his sleep, his tiny hand tightening around the green dinosaur. Emma adjusted the sling gently, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Outside, the night pressed close to the windows, but it didn't feel as heavy anymore. The rhythm of her life had been the same for so long: dip, scrub, rinse. Now, for the first time, she felt the possibility of something new. She turned off the tap, dried her hands on a thin towel, and looked around the small kitchen. It was still the same room, with its worn counters and flickering bulb. But tonight, it felt different. Not because the walls had changed, but because she had. Emma stood a little straighter. She had a shift at the corner store tomorrow, and laundry still to finish. But somewhere beyond the soap bubbles and the steady drip of water, there was something else waiting, something worth reaching for. She smiled to herself, the sound of Ben's breathing steady in the quiet. And in that moment, the world felt just a little more possible.